So now we come to the 10th and last of the 10 paramis, the 10 perfections. And this is equanimity. The Pali word is upekkha. And upekkha literally, etymologically means to have an overview of something. So to have the ability to see the big picture. And so this ability of sitting on a boulder and watching the river below you wash by, or the Buddha gives the analogy of sitting on a hill above the town and looking down at the hustle and bustle of the town and having this overview that allows for a certain non-reactivity, non-agitation, imperturbability of the mind, peacefulness of the mind. That is what equanimity is. And equanimity is, in many perspectives, a little bit like one of the pinnacles of Buddhist practice. It's one of the sublime, wonderful states, that precious states that get stronger and stronger through Buddhist meditation, especially mindfulness practice, but also concentration practice. And I think some people, when they hear the word equanimity, interpret it as being a kind of indifference or aloofness, or a kind of being removed in some kind of way from life. It's in some ways that's true, in some ways it's not. It's certainly kind of removed from the ways in which we get attached to things, or cling, or reactive to what's going on. So there is that sense of not being caught up or connected. And when people are used to human connectivity being through the attachments, through our needs and wants and clingings, it can feel like the person who's equanimity is no longer doing that, is now pulled back. So it can feel that way, or in a certain kind of way it is. But it is also the opposite is true, that equanimity is a little bit like having glasses which are dirty and not knowing it, and then cleaning the glasses and wow, it's really clear now, I can see it clearly, and how wonderful. Or the windshield of a car, it builds up dust slowly over time in the long drive, and then someone cleans it and says, wow, that's really clear. And it's not so much that we focus on the clarity of the glass, but rather we see much more clearly through the glass, through the glasses. And things stand out much more in highlight, or there's a delight and beauty even from seeing that clarity. So with equanimity, it's kind of like that. When the mind has an equanimous state, there's a kind of clarity and openness and even intimacy that's possible. When the opposite of an equanimous mind is an agitated mind, a reactive mind, a kind of habitual reactivity. And that actually kind of is more like the dirt on the windshield or the glasses, where we can't quite see, or we can't really connect so closely. When there's equanimity, the beautiful qualities of heart that we have more space and room to come out, because they're not dominated by the reactivity. And so it's possible for greater love and greater connectedness than the connections that come from agitation, which might feel, or come from clinging or attachment. Whereas attachment might feel like we're connected, it's usually not very deep. Through strong attachments, two people don't really know each other, can't know each other very well, except they know they're connected. And for some people that's, it's pretty wonderful, pretty powerful, and pretty reassuring. And once we settle in and feel maybe safe in that clinging relationship, there's deeper and deeper ways of being connected if we can let go of the clinging, let go of the attachment. And the equanimity, or the openness, the imperturbability, non-reactivity begins to settle in. And then much more can transpire, much more can be seen through the clear glasses or something like that. So equanimity is kind of the pinnacle of Buddhist practice. And in the 10 paramis, it's the last one. The ancient texts that talk about these paramis say that equanimity perfects the other paramis, which I kind of like because the understanding is that you're not going to do the others perfectly until you get to the end, or the last one with equanimity. So good enough is good enough. That we don't get caught up in trying to do each of the previous paramis perfectly, just right. We kind of acknowledge, accept, or realize that until the practice is really deep for us, of course we're not going to do it perfectly, but we do it good enough. And good enough in terms of Buddhist practice is good enough to continue developing along the path, continue to grow and move forward. And it's a lot of different ways that we grow on the Buddhist path. And I don't want to just say one way, but I do want to emphasize something which maybe is not emphasized enough. And that is that with doing, the Buddhist path involves our walking the path. If we walk a path and long enough, our legs get stronger and it becomes easier and easier to walk the path. As we walk the Buddhist path, then all the different practices we're doing, it requires some doing on our part. Even if the doing is only to relax and to open, that the muscle of relaxing, the muscle of mindfulness that allows us to realize that we're not relaxed, that gets stronger and stronger. So as we do the Buddhist path, there are all these different strengths that develop over time. And the paramis represent some of those strengths. And those strengths create the ballast. Those strengths create a support to make that boulder stronger that we sit on in the river. That the strengths create the stability that makes it easier to be equanimous. That equanimity is not just some kind of mental capacity that we learn to develop kind of disembodied from everything else. It's really equanimity itself gets stronger and stronger from the other things that are developing on the path. And even if all you're doing is mindfulness practice, a lot of these paramis are following along, coming along with the practice. And because as we are practicing more and more and seeing more clearly, it's more and more difficult to want to be miserly or tight with the things, and more natural to be generous. It's more difficult to harm people through violating the precepts. And so we tend to live more ethically. The more mindful we are, the more we realize when we're hurt by our clinging and attachments, and the more natural it is to let go, to renounce certain things. The more mindful we are, the more wisdom we acquire. The more mindful we are, the more we love mindfulness and delight in the engagement, the effort, the doing of it. And as we do more mindfulness, patience follows in suit. And mindfulness supports patience. Mindfulness helps us to see what's really true, and our ability to connect to truth becomes stronger and stronger. As mindfulness gets stronger, there can be a sense of a real understanding of what is important, where's the important places to base our life on, and so determination becomes stronger. And then as mindfulness gets stronger, of course we'll have more loving kindness, the ninth perfection, because the opposite of that, having a heart that's closed, we realize the limitations of that, the pain of that. And so we'll relax the closedness, the defensiveness around the heart, the armor. And then of course there'll be more sense of goodwill there, or kindness there naturally. And then with all these things supporting us with mindfulness, of course we'll start being equanimous. We tend to learn how not to pick up or react to what's happening, but just to be present for it and see it. So equanimity is kind of the pinnacle of practice, and it tends to be strongest in meditation, but also it's something we bring as a gift into the world, and allows us to have greater intimacy, greater connections, better relationships with people. And rather than keeping us aloof, the non-reactivity allows for a greater intimacy, but an intimacy that doesn't interfere with people or over-dominating with people, or somehow a way in which we bring in our attachments into our connection to other people. There's a freedom that's possible. And in that freedom that has less needs, there can be greater intimacy and connection. Classically, the idea of equanimity, the feeling, the experience of equanimity, is also a phenomenal enabler of the deepest letting go that can happen. That the letting go of self, the letting go of all our desires temporarily, the letting go of all the ways in which we are constantly building and constructing this world of ours, that equanimity sets the stage for things to be so calm and peaceful and quiet and unagitated that because it's so unagitated, something can just give way. Something can finally put to rest. Something that we can't put to rest, we can't let go of, we can't settle. But we bring the equanimity that allows our heart to finally let go, release, settle back, open up into awakening, into freedom. So, so that's the Paramis. So thank you so much for this time. And so next week, we'll have a guest teacher here for the 7 a.m. teaching. I'm going to be going up into the Sierras backpacking for a few days. And Nikki Mirgafori, who's a wonderful teacher here at IMC, will accompany you in these 7 a.m. Meditations and teachings. And you're very fortunate to have her, I think, and I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. And then we can have our Zoom meeting. And I'll try to put it in the bottom of the chat as I turn off the YouTube thing here. But it is, I think it's at the top of the chat, and it's on insightmeditationcenter.org, on the what's new on the bottom right, and on the calendar on probably the top event in the calendar on the bottom left of that homepage. And there's a password. The password is METTA, METTA. And if you end up in a waiting room, that'll probably be disabled soon. And I'll join you in a couple of minutes here. Thank you.